Hello and welcome to Men's virtual Ready Steady cookery demonstration. I want to thank Volunteer Now for organising to have us all, we're not quite together, we're virtually together, but what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a chickpea curry recipe. And to do that, where best to start than to take a look at the ingredients. Okay, so we're taking a little look at the ingredients, and what I've done here is I've measured everything out to make life an awful lot easier. Now, as you will see from your recipe card, here in this little dish, what I have done is I have put a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, I've put a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin, a 1/4 teaspoon of coriander, a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, and a 1/4 teaspoon of red chilli. So that's all of our spices all together there. The other things that I've done is I have crushed a good sized clove of garlic, and I have also grated 2 inches of ginger root. Now for a wee bit later on, and I'll show you these aren't on your sheet, I'll explain them later on, we have some sultanas, a little bit of curly parsley and some chives. I'll explain that later, don't worry about it. Here we have 1 chopped onion. We have 1 tin of chopped tomatoes, and what I have done here behind it is I've taken off the tomato juice, with the idea being that if the curry's a little bit too thick later, we can add a little bit of tomato juice rather than adding water, and we're adding flavour instead of watering something down. Here I have a 1/2 cup, and I'll explain these when we're talking about the utensils shortly. This is a 1/2 cup of uncooked rice. Here we have 1 400-gram tin of chickpeas. Now it's very important that you give them a really good rinse. Don't cook them in the water that was in the tin, rinse them out well. Here I have a tablespoon of olive oil, and here we have some garam masala, which we will add at a later time. So let's take a little look at the utensils. What you will need to cook this is 2 pots. This larger, deeper pot is the pot that I want you to cook the curry in. It'll make life an awful lot easier for you. I'm going to cook it in a pan so that you can actually see better what I'm doing. If it was in this deep pot, we wouldn't be able to see what was happening. The second pot is to cook your rice in. This sieve, which we will see later on, is to wash the rice after we have cooked it. This is a garlic press, and I have used that to press the garlic and the ingredients. If you don't have one of these, chop your garlic as fine as you possibly can, and it'll do perfect for what we're doing. These I want to introduce you to. These are known as American measuring spoons and cups. In your recipe, you'll see that we talk about a 1/4 teaspoon, or a 1/2 teaspoon, or 1 teaspoon, and 1 tablespoon, sorry. That's what they are. And these are 1/2 cups, 1/3 cups, and whole cups for measuring out. Guys, if you haven't got a set of these, buy them. This set here, I chose to use these today, were $1.99 in the around a pound shop. I have a very, very sophisticated stainless steel set, which I can't put my hand on just at the moment, but you're talking about 20 quid. This is a grater, and we use this grater to grate the ginger. And this bowl here is, years ago our mums would have served a big bowl of soup in that, but in the fancy world of food, this is known as a pasta bowl. The beauty of a pasta bowl when you're serving is you're not chasing the curry or the rice around the plate as you do on a flat plate. This makes it so much more easy to use. And the last 2 things I want to show you, firstly is a masher. We're only going to use that very briefly, but it is important. And last and by no means least, I use wooden spatula because I just think they're kinder to the pots and the pans. They don't scratch the bottoms. So that's all the utensils. Let's take a little look at how we're going to cook the dish. Well folks, here we go. We're ready to start doing some cooking, and the first thing we should do is to get the rice on. Now here, as I mentioned earlier on, is 1 cup of rice. There are many ways to cook rice. One is called the absorption method. Now we're not going to go through that today because that's something we nearly need a whole program on just to get it right. I've put in 1 cup of rice, and to cook that properly, what you want to do is take boiling water, and we're going to cover it nicely, put plenty in. You can't put too much water in at this stage. I'm also going to put a really good pinch of salt into it. And then we're going to take it over to the cooker just behind me here, and we're going to put it on to a medium heat. Now what I want to do first is I want to bring it to a rolling boil, turn it down a little bit to simmer, but while we're doing that, we'll just put the lid on. Okay, we've got the rice on in the back. A little hint, a little tip for you is this. Whenever you put the rice in and you put the water on and you put the heat under, make sure you give it a good stir first, otherwise it'll stick to the bottom of the pot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just double check that I did do that right. Good job. So the rice is on, and it's going to take about 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes time we'll check that, and then I'll explain it to you a little bit better. Here in front of me I've got the pan, and I've got the heat on under the pan on a good medium to high heat. And I've got my oil, which I've just dropped onto the pan there. That's the one tablespoon of oil. And as you can see, it's not an awful lot of oil. Right away, let's get the onions in there. So I can hear a nice crackle of the onions there starting to cook for me. Get them sprayed on the pan. On your instructions it did say that if you put in the onions and the garlic, and what I would suggest to you is wait until we've got the onions starting to caramelize a little bit before you add the garlic. If you add the garlic too soon, the garlic can burn and it'll become very bitter. If you put it in a few moments time, it'll be beautiful and it'll be sweet. So if you were a little bit closer here in terms of sound, you would hear the onions are just starting to cook here very, very nicely. Getting ready for what's going to be coming next, and in the ingredients as I showed you earlier on, this is the garlic that we crushed. So as soon as we start to get a little bit of action on the onions, I'll add the garlic and then we can start to move forward. We're looking for a little bit of caramelization. What is this word caramelization that you keep hearing cooks and chefs talk about? Well, whenever cooks like myself talk about caramelization, what we mean is this. Cook the onion, or whatever it is you're cooking, until you start to get that little bit of golden brown around the edges of, in this case, the onions. And what that is, believe it or not, is the sugars, the natural sugars coming out of the onions, and it starts to caramelize, and caramelize as in the word sweets, caramel. It's beautiful, it's sweet, and it starts to bring all of the flavour out of the onions. So the onions are just starting to cook there nicely. And just as there's a little bit of colour just starting to come onto them, as you can see here, and I just want you to see just exactly what's going on. We're keeping them moving about on the pan. You will see if you watch people on television and you see people cooking, they start and they flick the pan and they'll flick stuff all over the place. Well look, listen, you and I are probably not ready to be flicking food all over the floor. So what I want you to do is do what the Chinese call, which is stir fry. And that is, stir the ingredients on the pan as it fries. And if you have a whole lot of stuff in, use 2 spoons and keep it moving about. Little bit of colour just starting there. So what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to add the garlic. So that's our crushed garlic in. That's our ginger, and we're going to need that a little bit later on. So what we want to do is get the garlic in through the onions. And coming up very soon, we're going to fill the place with a smell of curry, because the next thing that we're going to add to the pan, trust me, if you were standing over this, you would just have to agree with me, the smell of that garlic and the smell of the onions is just absolutely amazing. Beautiful. So, I'll show you this in a second once I get this all in. But here we have, as we talked earlier on, all of our spices. From the salt at this end, right through to the red chili powder there at the front. And now we're going to start to get that, and wow, when I tell you something, you'd need a gas mask over here, because it literally takes your breath away. And don't worry, I'm not going to start singing. But as you can see when you look in, the onions are now becoming all sort of curryish, if there is such a word. But what's happening there is it's starting to take the flavours on. Now what you need to do at this stage is, and it's very important, is you need to cook the spices. We don't want to be just boiling the spices later on, we need to cook them. So we need to give it for at least a minute, and the aroma is absolutely beautiful. So we're going to cook this for 1 minute, and the next thing we're going to add is, we're going to add the tomatoes, the tinned tomatoes. I told you earlier on that I took the tomato juice off it, and we will add that to the curry if the curry's a little bit on the thick side. So trust me, the smells coming up here are absolutely gorgeous. And that's the spices toasted well in the pan. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add the chopped tomatoes. So now you can hear just how hot that pan is and just how hard the spices were working in there. And we want to get the whole lot mixed through, and let's see how it's coming on. So, chopped tomatoes, don't be afraid to give them a good old mush down while you're doing that, because even though they're chopped, you want them as fine as possible on the pan. So, the chopped tomatoes are in. And what we want to do is to cook this. This really is the epitome of curry sauce, because curry sauce is onions, garlic, spices, and particularly tomato paste. And we're not using paste in this because we want to keep this as sweet as we possibly can. And when I say sweet, I don't mean sweet like sweeties. I mean a beautiful, beautiful, balanced, mild curry. So, in your ingredients or on your card, it'll start to tell you that you should start to cook that until it starts to thicken up. And already, guys, and this is starting to cook up just nicely here, starting to thicken up just nicely. In and around the edge of the pot, you can see little bubbles and little simmers, and that's all the thickening that's going on around us. What we want to do at this stage is to add 4 tablespoons of water. Now, I hope you respect my judgment here, because I wasn't going to go to the trouble of measuring out 4 tablespoons, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4 tablespoons of water. What that's basically going to do now is it's going to get to work with all of those fabulous spices, and it's bringing all of the flavours all together, and it's moving them beautifully all around all of the food and all around the pan. Okay, what we're going to do is now we're going to add the chickpeas, but we're going to have a little twist, and the little twist is this. When we add the chickpeas are going to do 2 things for us. One, they're going to be the main constituent part of the curry. Now, if you don't like chickpeas, and I've got to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of chickpeas in the world, and you don't want to use chickpeas, blanch some potatoes. And what I mean by blanch is cook them until they're 3/4 or very close to cooked in little cubes, and add them instead of chickpeas. Or buy yourself a packet of cooked chicken, cut it up into little cubes and add it, and it'll be a chicken curry or a potato curry, but today we're making chickpea curry. So, as you can see, things going beautifully here in the pan. Look, we've got a lovely thick curry sauce here at the moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of the chickpeas, all in one go. But, and this is what the masher was for from earlier on, if you sort of start at one edge, roughly here, let's say, and mash about 1/3 of the chickpeas, just very gently mash down through them. What you're actually doing is you're making those bits of the chickpea to be a thickening agent for the sauce as we go forward. So there we have the chickpeas added. About 1/3 of the chickpeas have been crushed on the pan. So let's get them right through the sauce. Let's make sure they're getting flavoured beautifully with everything that's going on there. At this stage, if you like your curry slightly sweet, and I've got to say, I do. I love my curry slightly sweet. And I would add apple to my curry, I would add pear if they were in season. But all I'm going to do here this time is I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of sultanas. We're going to put them in now so that they get a chance to sort of to pump up as the thing is happening there. Okay. What we're going to do is now we're going to we're going to cover this up and let it cook for a little while. And you remember earlier on I mentioned to you, we want to make sure that it doesn't get too dry. So we touch on the dry side. I'm going to use a little bit of our tomato juice, and you've got to judge this for yourself. I'm going to put about that amount in, and let's see what that does to the sauce. Think of how you like your curry sauce if you buy Chinese or Indian or whatever it is, and try to get that sort of consistency. And I'm going to add a little bit more because it will thicken up a little bit more, and it'll be an even drier mixture as we go forward. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cover this and we're going to cook it for 5 minutes. And when we're doing that, I'm just going to check the rice, because the rice would be on at the moment for, what do you reckon, 6-7 minutes, something like that, yeah? So let's take a little look at that. Make sure that none of your ingredients are stuck up the side of your pot or your pan. Okay? And then what we want to do is just to cover that with a lid. And we're going to give that sort of 4-5 minutes or whatever to cook. Okay, I've just been checking on the rice, and everything looks good there at the moment. A couple of minutes before it's ready to go. We've had about 5 minutes here with the magic of television. About 5 minutes. So what we're going to do now is add our grated ginger. And then what we're going to add is a good pinch of garam masala. Garam masala is absolutely amazing stuff. So let's give it a little half of one as well. There's our garam masala. So let's get the ginger through our curry. Oh, the garam masala, the smells that it brings up, wow. When you have your garam masala, before you put it in, take a little sniff at it. It's a bit like the snuff that your granda used to use. It's lovely, lovely stuff. So just taking a little look here again, guys, and as you can see, it's a little bit on the stiff side, so let's use the last of our tomato juice just to loosen that a bit, to have it a little bit looser. Now if you don't have a whole lot of tomato juice, it is okay to use water, but if you have a little bit of double cream, don't put single cream in. Single cream can split and ruin the whole thing on you. So put a little bit of double cream in, even more sophisticated. So what I want to do is, I want to just grab a little teaspoon, because I want to check for the flavours, because I have a little bit of salt here in case it needs a bit of salt. So what have we got? Just a little bit of salt. So we're going to take a pinch of salt. Okay. I'm going to give it a good stir through. And we're going to let it continue to do its work there. I'm going to put the lid on it. Let it continue to work. And in a couple of moments' time, we're going to check on the rice. And so, our rice should be just about ready, because the rice has had about 10 minutes, maybe 11. Don't be afraid if you go a little bit over, but whatever you do, don't go under, because if you go under, there's just that, you know, Italians call it in pasta al dente, but with rice you don't want it to feel sort of rough or sharp or a little bit bitty. So, just going to take a look at it. It's looking absolutely fabulous. So, let me just show you now how to finish off rice. How do you like your rice? Some people like sticky rice, and if you like sticky rice, this is all you've got to do. Pour your rice through a sieve, then put it back into the pot, and you've got rice that'll sort of stick together. Maybe I'm a wee bit posh. I don't think so. But I like my rice not to be sticking together too much. So all you need to do is a good kettle of boiling water, and pour the boiling water through the rice in the sieve. And what you're doing is you're washing out the thickening agents that sit with the rice. Give it a little shake out. put it back into the pot and put the pot back on to the ring that is now turned off. So all you're doing is letting the heat come up through the rice, and what you'll have is the steam that you see coming off it is it just naturally drain the rice out for us. Let's take a look and see how the curry's doing. I've got to say it's looking absolutely brilliant. It is standing gorgeous. I think that we can now turn everything off. Yeah, don't need any more heat there. And whilst we get ready to start to plate up, and some little hints and tips about plating up, I'm just going to put the lid on it to help to keep it warm. Okay, we're ready to plate up. So, as I've mentioned to you earlier on, doesn't that rice just look absolutely perfect? So, to serve and to make it look good, what I'm going to do is get your spoon. Now, chefs use a fancy name for putting food on a plate like that, which is to quenelle, and it's to keep that sort of like a, how can I describe it, like a sort of egg shape each time that you put it on. Now, to me, I think that's plenty of rice for one person, and as you can see in here, from us having used just 1 cup of rice to cook, that's more than 2 portions. So I think that that's really, really good. What I want to do now is to bring to the table the main part, which is this beautiful, beautiful, amazing chickpea curry. And once again, if you try to lift it nice and tidy and put it onto the plate nice and tidy, 1, 2, and once again, before I take this pot away, I want you to see that there is more than enough for 2 people there in the curry. So the ingredients that you have on your card will make you lots and lots of curry. But just to finish it off, I want to make it look really, really nice. So if you're inviting your girl around or your fella around, depends what you're into, a little sprig of curly parsley on top of the rice and a few chopped chives just gently along the top of the dish. And you tell me that doesn't look like an absolutely beautiful dish of food. And so guys, we started out, I know we had to stop the film a little bit just to make things come together perfectly for you. But in total, that whole thing took no more than 20-25 minutes. Add to that sort of 20 minutes of preparation and hey, this is what you're left with. Chickpea curry. Remember I told you can replace the chickpeas with some chicken or with some nicely blanched potatoes or whatever you want. But the proof is in the pudding. So, a wee bit of rice, a wee bit of curry, guys, I can say in all honesty, that's beautiful. How could you make it better? Only one way you can make it better, with a really cold bottle of beer. Guys, I've enjoyed spending this time cooking this food along with you. I hope you've enjoyed it. And with a bit of luck, this is the start of one of many recipes that we can do together. But from me, Gerry Faloona, just want to say all the best, bye bye, and hey, happy cooking.